Okay, so now we're going to look at Apache here. And one of the things I've done here is I've written up a script to automate this process, which makes life easier. Now I'm going to right click on this. The system's a little bit different here for 17. And it's going to go here to gedit and select that. So you just right click on a script you want to edit or whatnot, and then you tell it gedit. We don't get tabs up here anymore where you can't just like stow stuff away as easily. Um, if you want to access something, let me show you this real quick. Just a little get around the system type thing. You click activities here, and you get your what they consider to be the most used basically things along here, and then you add additional ones that you're running pop up down here. Here's your windows and then that are open currently, and here's your applications here, assuming it will actually click and do it. There it goes. Alright, fifth time's a charm. Alright, but if I scroll through here, you can see this is very much like Android tablet compatible or something like that, where you could go in here and click with your finger. I think that's the idea behind these new interfaces, is to be tablet ready for, yeah. Same thing goes over here, and then you got it by category. So say you're looking just for like programming stuff, here it's going to pop up all the programming ones. Say you're interested in just the system tools, here's your system tools. So you can find what you're looking for fairly readily. It's just a different interface. The icons are a lot bigger so that you could touch them with your finger easier, something like that, you know, as far as that goes. But this is where your terminal is. It's under system tools or whatnot. And I don't know, they got universal access here. Don't forget we have other. Other has a bunch of the tools we need on a regular basis, including our firewall, etc. So here's your services, etc. Your servers like Samba. We'll get into that another day. But you know, so on and so forth. Over here is where you can type in search criteria. So say you're looking for a terminal and you know what you're looking for, you can actually start to type it in, and it will show up here, and you can select it to run it. Does that make sense to everybody? So if I click on terminal here, I will get a terminal pop up, which is ideal. Yeah, more or less. Yep. Alright, let me get rid of the K rights that decided to pop up there. It's also very sensitive on this interface, so be kind of careful with it, as it does like to just suddenly pop all over. You can have multiple desktops, it's just they're over here. So, FYI. You can have more than two. That's just the default two. Of course, you could have four of them, whatever. You can still set up your cube for Compass Fusion. You can spin it and everything. I've done that on Ubuntu at home. It works great. So you can still do your 3D interface if you want with this. Yeah, yeah. Compass Fusion runs on every distribution of Linux. So it's just a matter of installing it. Okay. You do need an NVIDIA card, though, for it to work. It's not going to work with the other cards. All right. So normally you would come in here and you would type yum install all this stuff. Now you could do that to terminal, and you could sit there and do that for all these different commands. But the easier thing to do is to actually script this up, like so, and just have it go in and install all these different things for you this way. This way you don't have to memorize it. Not only that, you can automate this process. So now if you need to set the server up over and over again on multiple servers, just run the script type thing. And now it makes it a lot easier for you to knock out a lot more servers a lot quicker type thing. And then you have more time to do whatever else it is you want to do or whatnot. You knock out your work a lot faster. Which really helps, you know, if you're under the gun for, you know, setting up stuff and you set up a new server to handle so many new people signing up to have websites hosted. And, you know, you're getting hit with a lot of people happening a lot. This is a great way to automate that to cut down on your overhead time, save you time. So just as before, we're doing # exclamation mark /bin/bash for doing the shell script here. Invalid input is equal to true in quotes here. This is going to be in the video, so you can just use this. We're doing an if statement. So instead of using the test command, I'm using the brackets here. So we have open and close brackets. The spaces are required. $, space -eq for equals, space 0. Remember, so we're checking to say, hey, are we having any options passed along with our program when we run it or no? If there's none, which would be 0, that means they didn't pass any additional options in when they ran our program. Remember, so if we do lamp.sh and we just run it like that, that means no additional options. Whereas if they type in sh space lamp.sh space Fedora, you know what I mean, then they're going to be passing in Fedora, so we want to do the Fedora install versus a CentOS or versus a Ubuntu. This lets you do like a unified script that would work for the setup depending on which distribution of Linux you're using, like that. Does that make sense? And then you can just type in, well, we need to do this one here. We need to do Fedora. Now I need to do CentOS. And bada bing, it's going to knock it out. So yeah, I mean, you can memorize it and go in and hand type in each one or whatever. This is way faster to do it. Not just from a physical standpoint, but also your chances of making mistakes are like nil with this. Once you get this ironed out, you can't make a mistake. Whereas if you're hand typing it, you can make mistakes, and then you have to go hunt it down and all this. Saves you time, headaches. You know, I mean, this is the better way to go. Hands down, this is the better way to go. So if we're doing all this hand, manipulation of stuff, there's no reason not to go in and script it, basically, and learn how to script it as you're doing it. So this way, you're building up your scripting skills and also learning how to go in hand, do these commands and edit them. So we'll still go over how to get into the configuration files and what they do and what they mean and all that stuff, and we'll look at tricks for manipulating them and whatnot. But basically, this gives you a good breakdown on it. So, of course, we want to be good little programmers. Instead of keeping the then sign on the then command on the second line here, we're going to put the semicolon here. So that way we don't have to worry about that. Way we can keep it all on one line, so it looks like more like regular programming goes. Just makes it nicely formatted, and then type in then here, echo in quotes. This program sets up and installs a LAMP server, period, close quotes. Same thing here, echo with a -n to keep it all on the same line so it doesn't go on to the next line. Which Linux distribution do you have? And this asking CentOS, Ubuntu. I need to also say /Fedora because this is the main thing we're adding from previously. What's up? What on earth?
That's why we're like, really?
That is truly weird. Okay. Yeah, the projector apparently can't do this color, so that's why you're not seeing the text. Yeah, it is. It's pink. So we know what color the projector doesn't do. So there you go. It's on the video. It's on the video. I promise. Yeah, no, there's something typed there, all right, and it's on the video. I promise you. So yeah, I apologize. Thank you for letting me know that. I didn't realize that it didn't do pink and red right now on the projector. That's like the other projector too. Jiminy Christmas. All right, and then we're using this read command below, read Linux distro, and again we're just reading in. We're creating the variable at this point called Linux distro, and we're reading a value in that someone types at the command prompt. And by doing the -n, this is going to keep it all on the same line, so that whatever they type ends up being on the same line. Where my cursor is, right here when they're typing it in. Does that make sense? This makes it nice and clean and pretty. Then we're coming down to the else statement here, and everybody can see this next one here. Yeah, they can. Good. Linux distro equals if it's not equals 0, meaning if they typed in something to go along with the program name. For instance, lamp.sh space Fedora, right? So they're passing in Fedora. Basically, they're selecting Fedora when they ran the program without having to be prompted for it, right? The same way you would do like, oh, I don't know, touch command or the move command or copy command or any of those type of regular shell commands, right? In which case we say else here Linux distro equals in quotes $1, which would be the first parameter being passed in for the program. So this would be like lamp.sh space Fedora. That space Fedora is the first option. Whereas like you're saying you're doing your move command, your copy command, that'd be $1 for the first one, $2 for the second one, so on and so forth for each option going on down. Typically you're saying this file, I want to copy it to this location, right? When you're using the cp command. Well, the actual file that you want to copy is going to be $1, and the place you're going to copy it to is $2. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. There we go. And then we end if by spelling it backwards with fi, fi, for whatever reason. I didn't come up with it. Anyways, while we're doing a loop here, infinitely loops until they put in the correct code. So, and question is, can you guys see this or not? No, you can't. All right, so here, let me make the imaginary code reveal itself. Yes. 00 agent projector. All right, there we go. While open bracket here in quotes $ invalid input close quotes equals in quotes here true close quotes. So we're saying, hey, did they have invalid input? Did they not put in the correct thing? Which the correct thing would be CentOS, Ubuntu, or Fedora. And remember, the -o means or here. So we're saying they could have said CentOS would be correct, or Ubuntu could have been correct, or Fedora could have been correct. If we need to support more distributions, we can add additional -os here. For instance, SUSE might go there, you know what I mean? SUSE type thing. Maybe Mandriva, so on and so forth. So you could add additional distributions of Linux this way. So so we're just going to keep repeating. That's why we're saying while invalid input, while they continue to input in the wrong input, we're going to keep asking them over and over again until they get it right. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what we're doing here. All right. So we're basically saying if they get these right, so if they said, if what they typed in was one of these, either Linux distro was CentOS, or Linux distro was Ubuntu, or Linux distro was Fedora, semicolon then, so that way it's all on one line. If this was spread out further, it would be all on one line. And then we say invalid input equals false. So if I say invalid input equals false, the while loop is going to terminate, and we won't keep asking them to put in the proper response. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So, and then we say break, because there's no point in me continuing to execute this code inside the while loop. Because if they got it right, why am I going to keep asking them to input the Fedora or CentOS or Ubuntu in there? There's no point in doing that, right? So instead, I'm going to tell them break, and we're just going to kick out of that. Else means that they didn't get it right. Correct, right? So if it's not, they didn't type in CentOS or Ubuntu or Fedora, then else, they typed in something wrong, right? So now we're going to say, we're going to write them a message to let them know, hey, dude, you might want to think about this here, what you're typing in. Echo, you have entered an error. You must type CentOS or Ubuntu. Let's make this a little you probably can't see this. Hold on a second. Let's add Fedora here, and then I'll highlight it so you can actually see it. So my apologies. There you go. Magical text is revealed. All right. So you must type in CentOS, Fedora, or Ubuntu. That should be a comma after CentOS. In all lowercase. You typed $Linux distro. So whatever they type is going to get displayed there. Does that make sense to everybody? It's not going to actually say $Linux distro when it displays it. It's going to display what they typed. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. And then it says, echo, this program sets up and installs a LAMP server. And then put it all in the same line here, when whatever their input is. Sorry, so this goes to the next line and it says, which Linux distro do you have? CentOS, Ubuntu. I need to say /Fedora. And at this point, whatever they type is going to be on the same line with it, so it's not below it, which would look stupid if it was. All right, Fedora, like that. And then I'm just going to add in that comma, so that way it looks somewhat nice. All right, so it's asking which distribution of Linux they want to set this up for. Okay, and then done. When we're done doing the while loop, we do it till it's done, right? So this is the end of that while loop. Right. Correct. It's an infinite loop. So it'll keep going until you get it right. So that's what we want. We don't want them to have the chance of inputting the wrong input. If it's going to be CentOS, this is how it's going to be set up. We're going to say if in bracket here, notice the spaces are required here. In quotes here, $ Linux distro, close quotes, equals, in quotes, CentOS, close quotes, close bracket, semicolon, then. Now, okay, so let's do a real quick refresher here. Brackets defines what are test conditions. Whatever we're testing goes inside those brackets, right? And then, can anybody tell me why we have to have the quotes and the $ for our variable? Can anybody remember that? Ooh, gotcha. That's the one that messes with people. Why the quotes? Can anybody tell me that one? Not at all? Okay. Isn't there value? Doesn't have anything to do with it. It's because it's text, yes. So we're putting quotes around it because it's going to be text. And the $, anybody remember the $? The read puts the value into the variable, but I think I know what you're trying to say. Basically, what he's trying to say is that the $ lets you access the value stored inside the variable, and that's exactly what he's trying to say. Yeah, you are on the right track. You're just not saying it. But yeah, I got what you're trying to say. He's right. That is the deal. If I'm just wanting to refer to my variable, I leave off the $. So for instance, when we're using the read statement or whatnot, we just said Linux distro, right? We didn't have the $ there because we weren't trying to access a value inside of the variable. We were storing a value into it. Does that make sense? So it's different. So on shell scripting here, we have to put a $ in front of it when we want to access the value inside of it. And because this is a string of text, we need to put quotes around it. Make sense? Because they typed in words, and we need to test that word against the word CentOS, which is why it's in quotes. Otherwise, it would consider this to be a variable instead of a little piece of text that someone typed. So we're testing to say, hey, is the word CentOS, does that match what they typed into Linux distro? That's what it does. And if it is, if they typed in CentOS all lowercase like this, because let's face it, they had to either type in CentOS, Fedora, or Ubuntu in all lowercase, or otherwise they wouldn't have ever gotten past that loop, right? So they typed in one of those lowercase, guaranteed. If they typed in one of those, and it happens to be CentOS, then it's going to do this block of code here. Now, okay, of course we do the semicolon then, so we don't have to take up an extra line, so it just makes it nice and clean without having to have extra indentations. So we're doing another if here, and again we're putting it in brackets to do a test, and we're going to say, what does $home do? Does anybody remember this? This is a special system variable on every distribution of Linux. No, not quite. That is what the whole thing does. It does ask them. It does determine whether or not they're root, but it's kind of ingenious how it does it. The $home shows you what their home directory is on the system for whatever user they're logged in as, right? So if they are root on the system, their home directory is going to be /root. So therefore, we know they have the proper permissions to run this script. Otherwise, they do not. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, if I come back as /home/student, we shouldn't even bother trying to do a yum install because this is going to fail because they're not root. You have to be a root in order to do these installs, right? In order to be an administrator. So you must be an administrator to do this task. And so we're testing to see whether or not they are the administrator. Make sense to everybody? It's pretty cool. So we're going to close that bracket there, and that's what that slash root does for us. Semicolon then, and then # for just doing a comment here. This installs our lamp setup. Yep. So yum install, the -y here keeps it from having to ask yes or no to install something. And so this lets it just run through without having to ask you any questions at all. And it just goes bam, 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 bam. And it just installs it. Yes, it assumes yes for everything. And then that way you don't have to keep saying yes over and over for each one. You don't have to babysit it. You can just run the script and take off and then do the next server while it runs off in the background. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have to sit there and babysit and say yes, 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 yes to everything as you do it. It's just like if you're trying to copy something and you don't want to sit there and say yes to copy the files or to delete files or something like that. Say you want to delete a whole set of files inside of a folder and you don't want to say yes to every single file in the folder, and there's like 10,000 files. So you're going to be there about an hour saying yes to a whole bunch of files. Hope you don't make any mistakes typing in Y to each file 10,000 times. So the more logical thing to do is to say rem space -rf, F being force, space what it is you want to delete and remove. Now it's going to delete all 10,000 files and not ask you a thing when it does it. And bam, they're just gone. Does that make sense? So same kind of idea, but we're doing it with the installation here. So that way we're not having to babysit it. You don't want to babysit things. I believe so. I'd have to look it up. Let me see here. I think I can look it up, matter of fact. So, let's see. Where are we at here? Alright. Let me become root. Alright. Yum -- help. Answer no for all is assume no. So no, you cannot say this -n. You actually have to say -- assume no. Right there. You can either do -y, which is the one I like because it's shorter, or you can say -- assume yes. So I just did -y because it's shorter. Y for yes. Yeah. Same thing like doing the man page. I could have typed in man space yum. It would give me tons of information on it. But -- help works for most of the shell programs. If you want to do the shortened version, you can say -h. -h is typically also help. But I don't know. This gives you a lot of options. Usually these little write-ups are more straightforward and simple and give you what you're looking for without having to do a whole lot of hunting for it type thing. So I don't know. I like this personally. Correct. I could have done -- assume yes instead of the -y here. Yeah, as an option. But I did -y because it's shorter, sweeter, and I don't know. It makes just as much sense to me personally. This is more verbose. What I mean by verbose, I mean this says exactly what it's doing type thing more. But I don't know. You enter in yes a whole bunch to the other one, so I think -y is pretty straightforward. Also, that I'm saying yes over and over again. So I don't know. That's one of those options where it really does match exactly what it's trying to say. I think personally, that's just my thoughts on it. But you know, if you have a different feeling on it and you don't want to do -y, then do -- assume yes. But remember, it's double dash. And you do. I would recommend pulling up the help thing to make sure you get it right. So yes, like he said, we could have done instead of the -y here, -- assume yes. Well, with single. Is it double ASS? Yeah, yeah, I was about to say, it should be like that, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, always have to do that little saying there. Alright. Which I'm not going to say on the video. Alright. But yeah, that's the other option you could have done. It does help you remember it, though. Alright. It's going to go ahead and save right now. Okay. So you put this in. So we need to use yum space install space -y space httpd. This is Apache. httpd, D is for daemon, and http here is your Apache server. And so we get our install for that going. It's the same as it is in CentOS as it is in Fedora. Okay, so you got the same installs exactly. Yum install -y MySQL gives you the MySQL client. Okay, key. This is the MySQL client. Yum space install space -y space MySQL server is going to give you the MySQL server. So what we're setting up is a LAMP server. LAMP server means more money, by quite a bit more money. Okay. If you just do an Apache server, you're only going to capture the people who just need basic websites, and there's tons of those around. There's some of them that are free out there. So it's a terrible market to try to be in to compete against free websites. It's just a draw to get people in so that they'll go up to a LAMP server later on type deal. Your free websites aren't going to be more than your basic websites, just Apache websites, it's not going to be much more than $3 a month type thing, or free, depending on the size and stuff options you offer. I mean, the most you could hope for, I'm guessing, would be about $10. But again, people are going to expect a lot more options for $10. LAMP is a lot more options. All right, so at the $10, $15, $25, $30 mark, you'll start looking at LAMP servers. All right, so they make more money a month. Linux, LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So it's basically a combination of software with an Apache server that gives you a more robust solution. And in this case, a LAMP server is a database website, driven website. The PHP will generate, it's a programming language and that you are basically setting up, and it will generate HTML code on the fly, and you can grab data from the actual MySQL database server and then thus generate web pages on the fly based on user input. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, depending on what you type in or click on, depends on what information it grabs from the database, and then what information it grabs from the database it uses to create the web page on the fly. So these aren't static pages from a traditional standpoint that, hey, I click on this link and it brings up this page and that's that page. It's just coded out to look exactly like that, and that's what it is. Instead, it doesn't do that at all. Instead, it gets the information from the database, depending on what you're requesting, and displays that information into the page and creates the page on the fly. We're setting up the servers to do that. That's what a LAMP server does. So that's what we're setting up. So we need our MySQL server because our MySQL server is a free open source database server, and it's a tier 3 database server. It's a really good one. This is what is used for most websites. By most, I mean like 99% of the websites use MySQL database server. Now there are big companies do use Oracle and DB2 and stuff like that, but most of your smaller developers or whatnot are going to use MySQL because it's a very powerful database server. It doesn't have quite the power of Oracle or DB2, but it's still really good, okay? And it's free. Whereas Oracle and DB2 is going to cost a lot of money, and most websites don't have that kind of budget for it. Does that make sense? So if you're trying to appeal to a mass web developer community, MySQL is going to be their choice because they're not going to be able to afford Oracle or DB2. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. Yum install space -y space PHP. This is that PHP language I was talking about that they use in order to access the database system, in order to access the MySQL, and to generate those web pages. So you would need PHP. Yum space install space -y space PHP -gd. GD is the graphics library. Here, just lets them like resize images when someone uploads an image or whatnot, things of that, and also so it doesn't lose color or quality when they do it. Using true 24-bit. Well, I'm not going to get into it. Yum install space -y space PHP common gives you common functions for PHP. Yum install space -y space PHP encrypt lets you do encryption, which is very important, especially with passwords and all that fun stuff. Yeah, you better put that in there. That matters. Yum install space -y space PHP pair. Pair is like a whole login system, whatnot, that's pre-built for PHP library, so that they don't have to constantly redevelop a basic component that's used a lot. Quite frankly, there's lots of times you've logged into websites. If you are logging into websites, you are accessing a database-driven website. Facebook is a database-driven web page. If you use anything like PhotoBucket, Flickr, I can go down the line. Any of these forms, I'm like all those forms and all that stuff. A lot of web pages out there. If you've ever used your online banking service, that's also a database-driven website. You won't believe how many websites are database-driven. Okay, there's a ton of them. So yeah, there we are. PHP-PECL-memcache. This is for memory caching. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah. Yum install space -y space php -m hash lets you do hashing. Yum install space -y space php -mysql lets you access use PHP to access the MySQL database system. If you don't give this to them, they can't access the database. So even though you install the database, even though you install PHP, you have to let them have the commands that are required to access the database. Yum install. Can you guys not see this? Yum install -y space php -mysql. MySQL again is the database system. And then we have yum install -y space php -xml. XML is a data format that's used very commonly amongst almost every website out there. It lets you store data in a centralized format that can be read by like anything, pretty much. Kinda. It uses tags like you would in HTML, but you can like make up your own tags for declaring the data. So like you say, user's name right here, and then it'd be the user's name in between the username tags or whatnot in there, if you will. And then this way, when they're looking for the username tag for the data inside XML, bam, they pull up that user, if you will. Of course, normally you would put that into a database system. I'm just giving you an example. You know, you could store anything in XML. I mean, anything. They use it for stuff that's non-web page too. They use it for regular applications all the time. It's a very popular format for universal data storage, more or less, as a file format goes. If you're trying to do it into a file instead of into a database, and sometimes that makes sense to do so. Okay. Also, web developers like it a lot. They're like graphical front end because they can edit an XML document really easily, and they don't really know how to edit a database as easily. So, all right. And so, as you learned previously, back when, you still have the /sbin/chkconfig space httpd space on, and this is going to basically enable the server to run when it boots up, right? So it's going to automatically start the Apache server so that it's running when you start up the computer. /sbin/service space httpd space start. It's going to start it right now. So we installed all this stuff and we're not going to wait. On another note, by the way, this isn't all the stuff you can install for a web server. You can install a whole lot more than this. For instance, you might want to install Zen Framework or something like that. Or maybe you want to install CodeIgniter or Cake PHP or one of those frameworks, etc. Those are very popular PHP frameworks that developers use so that they don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel. And they've done all the drudgery work. They have all the virus and hacker protection stuff built into it, into the framework by default, etc., etc. And so then the developer just issues these super commands, and then it does all the other stuff underneath the hood for them, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. So those frameworks are really popular. I didn't put them in there, but you could put them in there depending on what you need. So it just totally depends. Okay. So /sbin/service space httpd space start. And then starting MySQL server here /sbin. So now we're going to start the MySQL database server, because we also have to have a database server to run along with the actual web page, because they have to be able to access that database. Now this could be on a whole separate computer for the database server if you like. Matter of fact, it's better off if you do have it on a separate computer, because it lets you do better load balancing for the sites. I'm just saying. But say you're on a budget, so you throw the database server on this same virtual machine on the same computer, on the same server. You can do that. I just, like I said, it's better if you have it on a separate computer, but you have to have the budget for it. /sbin/chkconfig space mysql d for daemon space on here, and then /sbin/service space mysql d space start lets you start the MySQL database server. Does that make sense? And here I just threw in Python in there. I can move this up to another location here with the other installs. Actually, I want to, just because you want to keep everything really neat and together. It just makes it easier if you do. Notice I'm using really pretty comments because it makes it easier to read. So here I'm just kind of like breaking this up and letting everyone know what I'm doing at what point for the installs and whatnot. Is this making sense? So again, it's just keep it clean, keep it nice, keep it pretty. And then when other developers, other network admins come in to work with your scripts or whatever, they can easily modify them, easily see what's going on, quickly find what they're looking for, etc. Same thing for you. Say they change, I don't know, Red Hat, for instance, which has a bunch of changes, and you weren't expecting them. It's nice to be able to go back and find where on earth you are in your script, so that way you can make those changes easily without having to hunt forever to do it. As far as that goes. Alright. Else, you must be root in order to be successful. Remember, because this was this whole if they were the administrator. If they're not the administrator, now we're going to have to say something else to them. You must be root in order to be successful. After entering the password for root, rerun the program sh-lamp.sh here and echo. And it says -n, enter your root password. And the moment they, and we're doing the su -- form, so it's going to ask them to put the password right here. The moment they do, they become root, but it is going to kill our program in the process. And I haven't figured out a way to get around that. So I don't know if there is a way to get around that. So let me put it that way too. Yeah, so you got to rerun the script. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there is a way around it. Yeah, because you are changing permission levels. Whatever you're running is going to get killed because essentially you're logging out of that user. So I don't think there is a way around that. FI here, end of root administrator test, and this is basically the end of the CentOS installation and startup. Now let's look at Fedora here. Same setup here. We're saying else if that what they typed in for Linux distro ended up being Fedora. So instead, if they said Linux Fedora, if that's what they typed in, that's what they want to set up for, then we can say semicolon then here if $home equals /root. So we're saying, hey, are you administrator? Semicolon then. You notice it's the same logic over and over again. Then we can say yum install space -y space httpd. Notice it's all the same as CentOS here. So all the installs I just went over a second ago, it's identical. Let me move the Python up there again and give it a -y because I overlooked that when I was modifying that. I basically just copied the whole part of the CentOS one since it is so close to matching that of the Red Hat one. And previously to this version, it was identical, matter of fact. And I do need to give it a -y here. Okay. So here we have our yum install space -y space Python here. And that makes that install just like we did before. Okay, so we're starting in servers. Now notice this is different. Left these commented out to show the difference between the two, okay? Normally you'd use the chkconfig. We're not doing that anymore. We're now using systemctl. Instead of saying on, you say enable. Okay? This is true for all the servers. And then you have to give the server name, and then you say .service. Is the way it works. Okay? So instead of using chkconfig, that's what you're going to use. You're going to use systemctl. If you use the chkconfig for these or whatnot, it typically will not work for Fedora. So the only way to make it really work is to use the systemctl, and this is their new preferred method of doing things. And instead of service, we're going to use systemctl. So there is one nice thing about this. We don't have to have two totally separate commands. We can stick with just one command here, and it still is start. So what we use for start here is also still going to be start, restart, stop, etc. Does that make sense? And then again, we say httpd.service here. So essentially, we have one command to rule them all, and we determine whether it's enabled or disabled or whatnot, and if we're starting it up, stopping it, or restarting it. Yes, Lord of the servers reference here. All right. All right. Starting MySQL server. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to use our one command to rule them all again, and it's going to be systemctl. I'm guessing this means system control is what it means, which makes you have NASA references now. But systemctl enable equals MySQL D. Remember, D is for daemon. If it's just MySQL, that's going to be the client. Dot service here, and then now we are turning it on to be start when the computer boots up. It starts up. What's up?
The enable in your script there is a different color. Is that on purpose? Or am I just seeing that differently?
You're seeing it differently. It's the same. Yeah, I know it's identical. It's just whether or not I highlight it or not. But no, it's the same. Here, systemctl start MySQL D. Again, D is for daemon. Dot service to start the server now. Making sense? All right, so that'll run and start it. Then we say else here. Echo, you must be root in order, because again, does all this stuff here if they were the network administrator, if they're root, privileged user. Otherwise, they aren't, and we need to let them know that. So again, we tell them that they need to be root, and we ask them for their password, and then it's going to log them in as root and promptly kill the program. Then this is the end of the Fedora installation and startup. Like I said, I just copy and pasted CentOS and made my changes. It's awesome. It didn't take much. So else if here, and then open the bracket here. We have in quotes $sign Linux distro, close quotes equals open quotes Ubuntu, close quotes, close bracket, semicolon, then. So again, we're testing, hey, did they type in Ubuntu this time or not? If they typed in Ubuntu, it's pretty close to the same thing, only we have apt-get space install space and then the name of the servers. And the names of the servers do change for Ubuntu versus that of CentOS and Red Hat because they are on the Debian system, package management system, and they're not on the RPM system. So there are different names for them, okay? All the people on the RPM system pretty much have the same names. All the people on the Debian system have pretty much the same names. So if you're running Debian instead of Ubuntu, like for instance, you could have them do Debian instead. This is probably going to work also for Debian and not just Ubuntu. Does that make sense? I'd have to test it, but 99% of the time, what works for an install for Ubuntu also works for Debian. Same thing goes for any of the ones that are using the RPMs. So like if whatever would work for Red Hat is typically going to work for CentOS, typically going to work for SUSE, typically going to work for Mandriva, etc., etc. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. All right, good. So if I say apt-get space install, so basically you're replacing apt with yum. I didn't have to check to see if they're the network admin. I can use the sudo. And now in Red Hat, you can also set up sudo by setting up the sudo as user. I'm not going to get into that right now. There's a way to do that. And so in which case, then you could get away with using the sudo command, and that would check to see if they are root or not, basically. And if they're not, it's going to prompt them for it, and then they type it in, and then it'll do the install. And then all of them thereafter are going to install as root privileged. Right, and it won't kick them out. That's correct. So sudo is the ideal thing, but they have to have sudo set up to do that type thing. So, you know, there's that. By default, it's not set up in Red Hat. By default in Ubuntu, it is set up that way. You can set it up to do that in Red Hat. It's just not defaulted to that. Anyway, sudo space apt-get space install space Apache 2. Sudo space dash apt-get space install space MySQL dash server. So this is identical. This is identical. This is different. Instead of saying PHP, it's PHP 5. And then you have PHP 5-GD, PHP 5-pair, PHP 5-MySQL, PHP 5-XML, PHP 5-common, PHP 5-encrypt, PHP 5-mhash, and PHP myadmin. I threw that in there for setting up It was a nightmare for CentOS. It probably could get it in easily for Red Hat. This is a really nice option where you can remote do your administration of your PHP system as the administrator of the system without having to go in and do a whole bunch of command line editing. It lets you edit the whole system setup as a graphical interface inside of a web page. So PHP admin is installed by most web administrators. It's very common. If we were to do this in Red Hat, we don't want to do this in CentOS because they don't have it. Without, you'd have to do some serious hunting for the RPM for it and everything. It's a nightmare, blah blah blah. But if we did want to do it for Red Hat, you would literally come in here like this. I would change that from sudo here to yum install. I'm too lazy. I'm not typing all that out. Like that. That's what you would do for Red Hat. Does that make sense? And PHP MyAdmin is definitely a program you want to install as the network admin. It makes your life a lot easier. There's also some ones like Squirrel and stuff like that for the mail administrators. We'll get into that when we do the mail one. But that makes life a lot easier for handling mail accounts because you get a graphical interface for handling that whole thing, which is awesome. And that's what you want, so that way users can just log in. There's also some other ones for doing PHP database driven web mail driven websites. I'm not going to get into that. It's really complicated. It is really complicated. I'm not going to touch that. But anyways, there's PHP MyAdmin. And then in order to start it, they don't have a turn it on system. They have a totally different system. It's more advanced, really. And it's happens on the fly, if you will. So they use the sudo space service. Here, Apache 2 start. So you just tell it to start, and you tell it to start. You don't need to tell it to turn on. So that comes on at boot. It kind of handles all that stuff as an interactive system, so it's different. Again, Python, I need to move that over with the other install, so that way it's nice and clean. But that is basically the end of the whole setup and install. Well, basically the install of it. Echo-n, all this stuff not required. This was just an example type thing. Essentially, at this point, you have a running and working script that will install for you basically a LAMP server for any of those 3 distributions of Linux. Does that make sense? So this gives you a nice overview to help you get ready for the Linux Plus, because this really shows you all the different variations. Not much in variations, is there? It's pretty much the same stuff for the most part. But this way you can see the little variations you have between the different distributions of Linux to help you get ready for the Linux Plus exam. Things of that nature. Again, that's my goal here. Alright, after that, you would just run the script and then you're good to go, and it'll do all the installs and everything, which is ideal, and that's what you want to do. So I'm just going to come back over to this thing here. Alright. And let me make sure that this thing is pulled up so we can see what we're doing. There we go. It's like, I know that ain't right. What did it just do? Did it just close it? Oh gosh, okay. Right click, hold it down, maximize. Be careful when you're right clicking. If you don't like click and hold, man, that thing just wants to do something. I don't know what it wants to do, but it's going to do one of those options and it just goes off. So be careful about that. But anyways, from here, at this point, I can just easily run the script. So if I go into, I put this in my scripts folder, and I called it lamp.sh for my file name, whatnot. Now I can sit there and do a chmod on this thing and give it execute permissions and all that stuff, and that works too. Like for instance, I could do this right here, and I could say lamp.sh, and then now it's going to be execute permissions across the board. For instance, if I do ls-l, there it goes, and then now I can just run it as lamp.sh as an executable program. Or if I didn't have the execute permission on it, I could do an sh space lamp.sh. Now remember, we did this as an option to where we could pass in what it is we want to do for the install. So instead of letting the program run and ask us, I can say space Fedora and tell it I want to do Fedora. And I can just pass that in. Does that make sense to everybody? and bam, it's going through all the installs. And it's telling me there's nothing to do because I already installed it at home. And it's not having to ask me anything. Yeah, because of those commands or whatever. Otherwise, not much. Very little, as you can tell. Yeah. Yeah, I'm wanting to get you guys more comfortable with the shell scripting. Also, there's some exam questions on shell scripting along with Apache questions. So I'm just trying to marry the two together. Of course, I'm not connected to the internet, so it's freaking out about right now. So it's not going to find, or it's not going to be able to connect to the internet to download that whole RPM, unfortunately. So it's throwing a fit right now. It's going through all its, so it's going to error out, of course, on that. But basically, at this point, it went through and it ran those commands automatically for the system CTL, and it started up your Apache server, and it turned it on, and it also did the same thing for the MySQL database system. So we're up and running, literally right now. So now, the only thing we would have to do is modify the configuration files. If you want, you could use commands like sed. I'm not getting into that today, but you could use commands like sed to go in and find and replace and actually modify your configuration files without ever having to go into them. And you could script that out too. So if you had a special configuration that you wanted to do or something like that, you could have it hunt it down and replace and find it and all this stuff. As it is, let's just play with the grep command so that way you guys can learn some tricks with it. Okay, saves life, not lives, but saves time. I guess if time matters for saving lives, then it would save lives, right? So it's etc. Hopefully you're not in that scenario. All right, so if I were to cat the PHP ini file, you would be horrified at the result. And chances are that this thing is literally thousands of lines long. I did it in another class. It was 1,800 lines long for the configuration file for PHP. Now, this is just the PHP part. Notice that's not the Apache. That's not the MySQL database. It's just one piece. And the more stuff we install into the PHP, the bigger this file gets. Okay, and I just did a very basic, nice startup setup. Now, if I put Zend in there and some other stuff, you expect this to get longer. Okay, because they're going to have to add the stuff in there for Zend, they're going to have to add the stuff in there for CakePHP, so on and so forth. And so each thing you add in there gets added in. Alright, so that's a really big file, and it'd take forever to find what it is we're looking for, like an hour, for instance. Literally, it could take you an hour. I know I want to change the uploads. Stuff that has to deal with uploading files, I need to change stuff like that. Okay? So if I want to do that, I need to be able to find where it is in the file without spending an hour looking for it. Okay, because I need to set up like several servers and I need to get going with this. So we're going to use the grep command. A note also, Apache is the most popular web server. Makes up 85% of the web servers on the internet. And it's used on Windows, Linux, Unix, on all distributions of operating systems. So it's harder to set it up on Windows, by the way. You can't just say, oh, install. No, you have to actually go out on the internet and find each one and hand install each one by one. And then you're not going to have some of these handy search commands in Microsoft Windows if you're DOS. So let me show you grep and how it's going to make your life wonderful. So -n right here. And then we're going to say PHP, actually we're going to say what it is we're looking for, uploads. And then we're going to say php.ini for the file. Bam! Told me right away where it is. So it's on line 803, 791, 790, etc., etc., etc. It lets me know about in that area where I need to look. Actually, it lets me know exactly where to look. So if I did VIM or VI, either way, I'm going to do VIM, and I'm going to say PHP ini is going to let me edit that file. And one of the things I can do with this is that I can actually tell where in that file it is now. So if you look down here as I scroll, check it out, you can see line. So this is the line number right here. And this is where the cursor is on that line. So right now it's at the furthest position of position 1. However, if I were to move that over, see that as I move that cursor over, look how that number right there changes. So that's what it gets into. Now we know we need to get down to line, what was that, 791 or something like that? Well, you can also use page down, assuming I have it on this keyboard. I do, cool. And I can literally just start skipping through the pages quickly. Real quickly. Probably. You can probably type in a colon and then type in the number, like for instance. Yep, he's right. Very cool. Awesome. So that makes life even better and easier. Good job. No problem. Come over here. So many awesome little tricks you can do to shorten your time. Hey, show-offs are great. Alright, so here we come into insert. And I can say how big I want to allow the files can be for uploading. So for you, on my server, I set it to 200 megs, and for you guys, I limit you down to 50 megs. But I mean, you know, it could be anything type deal for what you want. So maybe you want to allow, say, 50 megs to be uploaded for the maximum allowable size of a file. And also, the bigger the files, the more processing it takes and more memory it takes to handle it on the server. So you need additional processor space, additional memory, and additional hard drive space to handle larger files. Because if you get a lot of people hitting at once, uploading files, and the files are bigger, you can crash the server when it runs out of RAM. So there's a lot of variables to think about. And how do you find that out? By crashing the server. Hopefully you don't crash it, but you know what I mean. You put in the numbers and you watch it climb up and up and up, and you go, you know, we just don't even have the server capacity to handle, you know, larger files. Maybe you started out too big and you crash the server and you need to tune it down, you know. So you'll find out how to tune stuff on the job, you know, but you don't want to find out the hard way as much as possible. So 20 is the number of files that a single user would be able to, in a single request, shall we say, can upload. So we don't allow for more than 20 files at once from a single user. Does that make sense? Well, the room got silent on that one. Yes, sir.
With those two commands, the upload max file size
Mm-hmm.
or max load uploads,
Right.
would it be, you know, does the program say either or?
No, it's both. It's and.
If you got 20 files and it exceeds 50 meg, is it just going to say, hey, you're out of luck, you can only load up 10 because that's your 50 megs?
Oh, no. That's 50 megs per file. So take that 20, multiply it times 50, and that's how much that person can upload at once. Yeah. So it's actually quite a bit. Yeah, it's bigger than you think. Yeah, so I mean, not too cool, I guess, on that, but you know, you're looking at what, 1,000. You're basically talking about a gig that they can upload in, you know, files at once for one person. Yeah, it's quite a bit. Something else you're going to want to do, and that is you're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to set this uploads directory here. So upload temp directory. You're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to set it to something. Yeah, on these configuration files, the semicolon is a comment on it. It just varies on the configuration file depending on whatever's reading it in. So for this particular one, instead of being a pound sign, since it's not done in shell, it's being done in another language, it's semicolon for the comment. So slash right here, and I could say something like var, and I could create a special magical folder called uploads that would sit outside of, actually, since I'm Red Hat, I can say slash www and then slash uploads. And it's kind of cool because the DOM, I'll show you later on, the DOM for the Apache is stored inside of slash var slash www slash html, and that's where the actual web page resides. So for security reasons, you want to keep your files and folders like that outside of the actual directory where web pages can be generated or accessed by the users. Because when the end user comes to access a web page, the highest they can go up in the directory structure is going to be /var/www/html, because that's what the DOM is, and that's where the DOM is where it's high as they can go. Does that make sense to everybody? It'll make more sense in a second. But this has really important security implications. And let me point this out real quick. Essentially, what happens is that, say you have a service where you need to offer downloads of a product, like games, maybe, like you're letting people download games or films or music, or maybe it's something totally different. Maybe it's training videos, or maybe it's some kind of something like that, right? So it's a digital download type purchase system. You cannot put that folder. Okay, you can, but you'd be stupid to do so. You do not want to put the folder with all that digital content inside of the /var/www/html folder. If you did, a user could get into that folder and steal all digital content without paying for it. They'd be able to access it. Okay? What you want to do is have that folder outside of the actual directory tree that would where they actually where the end user would have access, and then the actual web application accesses those files and distributes them to the end user. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So this basically prevents people from stealing the files. We also don't want people going and messing around with the uploads directory. That's a temporary upload directory. We want to be outside of that directory tree structure because we don't want anyone to have access to it. Say if someone set up something where they could try to start deleting or downloading people's upload files as they uploaded them to the site. Does that make sense? It's not something you want them to be able to do, but if you did put it in the regular directory tree structure, it would be something someone could try to do. So we're going to put it outside of it. So I'm putting it in /var/www/uploads. And this is outside of the DOM. Does that make sense to everybody? So therefore, a regular person can't access it. It can be accessed through PHP, through the code, underneath the hood, but blah, blah, end user who's using the web page can't access it. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. Your physical web server is still outside of what? DMZ. Your user can still access the web page, but what I'm saying is they can't access particular folders within inside the hierarchy of the folder structure if it's outside of where the DOM location is for the folder. The DOM location is going to be /var/www/html by default in Red Hat unless you change it. So essentially what I'm saying is, yeah, but that has nothing to do with this. You're talking about routers and all that stuff for how they get access to it. I'm not. If they don't access it, they're not going to be able to access the web page at all. Right? That's totally different. Instead, what I'm talking about is the actual permission level and where they're able to go on the actual server on the software side inside of Linux in the folder structure, what they're allowed to access and what they're not allowed to access. Does that make sense? Oh. Oh, well, let me be real clear then. Assuming I can click on this. We'll see. File system. Var. www. HTML is where the web page is stored. If I'm outside of that, so when the person comes to go see my web page, this is the folder they're in, and they're not allowed to go out of this folder. They can go in folders inside of that folder, but they cannot go out of that folder. This is the DOM for the website. This essentially is the website for this folder structure. Now everybody gets it. Okay, cool. So if I put the structure for the uploads folder, it's outside of this. So someone accessing the web page can't access the folder sitting out here. Right. Right, and I don't want to give them access to anything else. And that's done transparently inside of Apache. But so we're working with this PHP, whatever. When someone uploads a file through PHP through Apache web server, it's going to automatically need to put that file somewhere. So we're having to have a temporary folder for it to put it before it ends up placing it where it's going to go in its final folder inside of the actual web page itself. So we're going to put this outside of the actual directory structure. And when I say directory structure, I mean quite literally the directory structure right here. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. So first off, I need to create a new directory. I need to call it uploads, right? Because I did that. Right. I told it to go to this directory that doesn't exist. So I need to do something about that. Um, see, because I called it uploads, which I think is a good name personally, but I do need to make that exist. So let me go ahead and save this. Now I'm not gonna. This doesn't go live until I restart my Apache server. So don't worry, I can actually get away with this and it won't crash the server if someone goes and does something like this. Does that make sense? Now don't go and do this and then restart the Apache. Don't do that. Restart the Apache server right after you save this, because then you did do something stupid, because now the folder doesn't exist. Whatever. I'm just saying. That's not smart. Okay. But, okay, so at this point I need to cd into /var/ww so I can create that folder there, right? The new uploads folder. So mkdir, and you call it uploads. Bada bing. There we are. If I say ls-l, like so, there's the uploads folder. Now, there's a problem. The owner of that folder is root. We do not want people's files to get uploaded to become root privileged. That is a really bad and stupid idea, right? Okay, I'm glad we can all agree on that. So, what we want to do is we want to add a new user called www-data if it doesn't already exist. Let me see if you can change the owner to. Now, by default, this is a standard user for Apache servers. Let's see if they have it inside of Red Hat. They didn't have it in CentOS. They do have it in Ubuntu by default. Let's see if they have it in Red Hat now. So I might be able to get away with this. www-data. In CentOS we had to create it. In Red Hat you may not have to. You have to do everything for CentOS, it seems. And apparently also have to do it for Red Hat. Great. That sucks. Oh well, we'll create it. Alright, so users and groups. Let's add a new user to the system. And the username is www-data. This is a standard user. I'm going to make their password. I could really care. I mean, you could. If this is real setup, I'd probably make it very secure or whatever, but this user is going to have practically no permission to do squat. They're not going to have a home directory. You know what I mean? So they're going to have none of that. They have bin, they have bash. Essentially, they just sit on the system for pure existence of having no permissions to do squat for anything. Other than that, hey, they are the owner of these files, and they have permission to do nothing. So that way, when someone uploads a file, if it's if they decide to do something bad with their file, it's not going to have permission to do anything on the system. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Create a private group for the user. Sure, why not? I don't need to specify nothing manually. Yeah, I know it's weak. All right, so there we are. We now have www-data user. Okay, cool. And that's in existence. Good, 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 good. So then I can just come into this uploads folder and run that command again. And then do it again, but I'm going to change that from chown to chgrp for change group. The other one was change the owner. And now if I do an ls-l right here, we see uploads is now has both of those set up. And I could even do a chmod 777 here for uploads. I don't care.
So it's okay that folder that user has you got rewrite and execute for user group and everyone else.
Yeah, but it's going to run as that user if it runs. So it has the permission to do squat. The only thing it's going to be able to affect is those images or whatever files are being uploaded into that directory and nothing else. Right. Right. Yeah, it can execute, but it can only run inside of that user. So, it's not like it can go and do something on the system, really. Some of this stuff requires execute permissions for it to work on some of the web stuff. Otherwise, it will not work. So, and some things you can get away with lower permissions. And you can get away with not having execute permissions. You could just be read and write, for instance. There's other times where you can get away with just read permissions for some of the files. So you have to be aware of what's for what, but I just threw in 777 for now. If you feel like you want to change permissions on that and you can get away with it, go for it. You make this more secure. Awesome. Yeah. Yes. For right now, I'm definitely going with Fedora 17. 15 had a lot of problems where things just didn't work, and stuff I tried previously worked fine on 17. You can grab it from me, but I'm not done testing all the servers on it. So maybe next week I'll be happy with handing it over to everyone. If you want it this week, I have no problem handing it over to you right now. You can stay on CentOS for right now if you like, and then we'll switch over to Fedora 17 because 15 you about guarantee it's not going to freaking work. So basically, it's just frustrating as all get out. But 17 works like a charm on this stuff so far. Every server I've tried on 17 just works. So I haven't had to have a lot of issues. It is different for the commands and all that. But in addition to the commands and everything changing on 15, 15 also had lots of problems where standard stuff just wouldn't work type deal. It looks like they've ironed it out. And there was problems in 16 too, apparently, from what I was reading on posts and whatnot. And it looks like they've gotten a lot of that stuff ironed out in 17. So it took like 2 releases before they really got stuff ironed out. And so, besides, 15 is going to get discontinued here coming up anyways, after once 18 is released here coming up. So, no point in getting everybody up on 15 for it just to disappear anyways and working around all those problems. Just doesn't make sense. So going with the newer one, yeah, the whole system is different on the graphical end of things, but hey, going forward, that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be the older system. So it's gone through 2 totally different visual revisions. On Red Hat, we went from what we used to use then to this newer one in 15, and it's changed it again in 17. I expect to see something pretty close to this in 18, what's in 17 here, without much changes. So, yeah, it's happening with all the different Linux distributions. It's happening with Ubuntu also. Ubuntu at least only had 2 different desktops. It didn't go through 3 different variations like it did on Red Hat, but, it's just a little frustrating. But anyways, so there's our uploads directory. It now exists. So now, if someone were to access this, it would be fine. Does that make sense? So now that means we can restart our Apache server. So the way to do that would be systemctl, spell it right, Nate, httpd.service. But of course, I need to tell it to restart. Bam, it did it. And so now it's restarted. When your Apache server is running correctly and all that good stuff, simply, I'm going to put this on a different desktop. Why not, right? Because I can. Alright. Actually, because it keeps it more organized, because I'm really getting annoyed with all these windows overlaying each other right now. It's really bugging me. I like my multiple desktops, quite frankly. Alright. So if I say localhost like this, enter, bam, test page came up. This is what is generated by default from an Apache server when there's no index.html or index.htm or index.php. By the way, as the order of precedence, index.html and index.htm take precedence over index.php. So if you have one of those other files in there, even though you have the PHP file, you will not see the index.php file. The index.html file will take its place when they type it in. You will have to explicitly type out index.php to access the index.php page. So that can be used to your benefit. You can sit there and have it set up while you're developing something, have a splash page up there telling everyone that the page is under development, and then the moment you're done, you simply delete the index.html page, and then the whole rest of the site shows up as the index.php site. It's pretty cool, actually. We'll go over just a little bit of the PHP stuff for doing the test to see what PHP stuff is installed, so that way we make sure we have the right stuff for the end users that are going to be developing web pages on our servers. But anyways, let's just see the local host here. And let me show you how to make a little web page here in just a second. And I'm also going to go over the Apache configuration file too. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that, because they want you to write a basic web page too, by the way, here at school does for their labs. So let's look at that too. I definitely know it, so let's do it. And check it out, it automatically adds desktops as you need them and as you use them up. That's really cool. That's different. Wow, that is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, that's cool. Alright, I didn't want that one so much. We can also keep using gedit if we like. So like as we wrote our script here, we can also use this to write a web page. As a for instance, no kidding. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's create a new one. And let's just start coding a web page. And a basic one, let's do a web page and let's do a PHP page, okay? So that way you can see both. And the PHP one I'm going to do is the PHP info one function, where it displays all that data and generates that page for you automatically. So it lets you see what's installed and what's set up. Alright, so just as HTML, basic HTML page. You know what? I'm going to show you the easy way, assuming I have it installed on the system. I don't know what is and isn't. Let's see if they have something on here that would make life easier. Because if they do have it, then we can graphically create web pages. If they don't, then we can't. So we'll find out real quick here. Also like to point out that OpenOffice has web development in it too. In which case we could use it to develop web pages also. Unfortunately, I'm unable to install a web developer, but there's a graphical one that lets you just drag and drop and create web pages. And it's done through CMonkeys. If you install CMonkey, it has a web page developer. You can drag and drop and create web pages graphically. CMonkey, yeah. CMonkey is the full-blown Firefox. So Firefox is like a stripped-down version of CMonkey. CMonkey is Firefox with all the extra trimmings. So it has Thunderbird in it too. So it has the email system in it. Also has where you can make web pages. It also has a whole chat system in it. Has several things in it in addition to the actual web browser. So it is Firefox on steroids, basically, is what CMonkey is. Mozilla.org. Of course, you can just come in there and say install applications and just type in CMonkey and download and install it through there too. Through this whole thing here. So that's also easy to do. And of course that'd be under what system tools it is or something like that. Yeah, add remove software. Click on that right there and it'll let you do it. So but unfortunately, again, we don't have one already in here, and since I don't have an internet connection, I can't just download one. Go download one. Blah blah blah. So with that said, let me look up the Office software, and I know for a fact that OpenOffice Writer also has web development capabilities, and you can do graphically create web pages with OpenOffice Libre. Believe it or not. I know that sounds crazy, but no, you really can. So let's do that. Alright. So get this whole thing, and instead of writing a paper, we're going to go to New here and check it out, HTML document. And there it goes. So it has this whole thing set up for creating web pages. It has a text body here, font name, it has font size, and a bunch of other stuff too. Besides that, we can usually go here into Tools, and hold on a second. There's some extra menu bars that you can add to this thing, where you can actually see your web development stuff here. Here's other things like anchor, wrap, alignment, arrange, flip, group, object, etc., bullets, insert, hyperlinks, for instance, section, tables, movie objects, sound, OLE, plugins, formulas, charts, etc. It's actually pretty powerful, by the way. Tables, frames, etc. for web development. A lot of special stuff in here. View, web layout. You can also tell it to view the source code. So right now we're seeing the web page as it would be displayed and not the actual code. Does that make sense? And then I also can do edit, and I can do file, and there's a way to do. They also have a wizard for creating a web page, which I'm not used to running. But anyways, so I don't know, my test web page. It's something stupid, I know, but whatever. I could come in here, I could select this bit right here, and I could do things like I could bold it, for instance. I could underline it, even. I could center it on my page, etc. I could do lots of things with this. See here, what would be another good example of something? Well, I don't have anything online. All right, let's say Red Hat. Let's turn that into a link, for instance. All right, insert hyperlink. So there's the target. There's the text, and the target's going to be an actual web page, and it'd be something like http://www.redhat.com, for instance. Right, and then we can say if we have frames set up, we can do the frames on here. If we want a pop-up name, you say Red Hat homepage. So this way, if someone brings their cursor over, it's going to bring up a little pop-up hint, etc. Apply, close. All right, so now it's a hyperlink. Now, if someone clicks on it, it'll take them to that web page. No joke. In addition to that, let's throw an image in there for the heck of it. I don't know. We're just doing something, right? So we need to insert an image. So basically, yeah, we can do all kinds of stuff on this thing. Comment, script, frame, table, from file. It might be from file, object, file. All right.
Does that program automatically structure the text within that document? Right?
Yeah.
So like if you put a head data, because you selected that as head, it doesn't matter if it's at the bottom or the middle of the page. Will it automatically know?
When you start putting things in, it automatically puts the code into the proper order for stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. So the head tags are going to be above. You're not going to be accessing the head tags, right? It's going to be doing that underneath the hood. And then basically we're working in the body tags, more or less, of the actual HTML. We'll get into that in just a second, but that's basically what he's talking about right now. If I go into Pix Maps, though, as that's just the standard thing in here for this system. Yeah, and we're going to go into USR. We're going to go into USR. Thank you. We're going to go into, I think, Share. And then we're going to go down to Pix Maps, which I could probably start typing P to find it faster. Pix Maps. And then I can start looking up, I don't care what it is, really. Eclipse, maybe. I don't know. That sounds great. Sure, let's throw it in there. There we go, the Eclipse picture. I can resize this, I can place it, so on and so forth. Make sense? This is our new web page. It's absolutely stupid, but I don't care. And I'm going to save this as an index page too. So I'm going to do index.html. Index is your first page. So when someone goes to blah, blah, blah website, this is the page that first displays. Okay, so it'll be the ugliest website ever, but I don't care. It gives you an idea of how to do this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now remember, we had a view here, and we could determine whether or not we saw web layout or we got to see the HTML source code. There's what it wrote for us. Let's go over how this works, and let me go a breakdown of these actual commands and what's happening, okay? Because I do care that you understand this or not, because you will have to actually look at HTML documents when you're working with web servers, and sometimes you have to help them troubleshoot their sites for people. They pay you money to do it, but I'm saying sometimes you end up having to help out on stuff, believe it or not. So doc type HTML public here in quotes here, dash here slash WC W3C slash DTD HTML 4.0 translation slash in quotes. So basically this is saying this is HTML4. This is not the strict format or whatnot, which is XHTML. So this is more loose format. This is not as good. It's better off a strict format because there's fewer chances for variations between the web browsers. The W3C is the conformity group where basically the regulations and far as like what things to follow and stipulations are set by this group for HTML for basically web pages. HTML basically defines your entire web page document. So these two tags encompass your entire page. Does that make sense? So this is the start of the page and this is the end of the page. The head is the top of the page. This is not displayed. Okay? Only stuff in the body is actually displayed. So the head tags here, that's opening head tag and this is a close tag. So you notice it's the same stupid thing over and over again, but you're saying a slash in order to close it. Close a tag. You just say head to start that tag and then slash head to close the tag. Alright? Meta. Meta tags are special for doing search engine optimizations for finding your page. And what you put in the meta tags, the search engines pick that up and store it in their search engine database system in order to find your web page on the internet. So yes, the stuff in head actually matters. Yeah, because people are putting goofy stuff in the header, yeah. This is also where your title can go too. Right here, you can give a title for your page. Right now, it's just nothing, whatever. But you could say something like "My first web page," not instead of fist. My first web page. My fist web page. Pa! Bruce Lee page. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, exactly. So here you have your whole. This gives you the title of your page. When they go to it, it shows up in the little title bar at the top of the web browser. So you don't want to say nothing. You know, what I mean, there where it says like not, not created or whatever, untitled. Untitled is what it says when you don't put something in there, so it looks stupid. Looks like you don't know what you're doing, which is accurate, but still, you don't want people to think that. And here it's just like meta names and stuff like that, author, created by, changed, blah blah blah. But you can set up meta tags, and then that lets them search for it. And then you end your head. Also, what you can do besides this, I'm not going to get into it really, but you can also then define, this is where your JavaScript can be loaded in, or CSS for CSS files to load in for stylizing the pages to make them look a certain way. JavaScript can add a client-side execution framework where it basically allows you to interactively mess with the page without having to go back to the server and communicate back and forth a whole lot. For instance, Google Maps, you can just simply just grab the page and start scrolling it without having interactively, without having to go back to the server and go, oh, did you mean to click on this to move over there? Okay, well, let's refresh from the server and come back, blah, blah, blah. Instead, you can just grab the map and start moving it. All right, so that'd be an example of JavaScript, and it would go over here in the head area, head tag area. So sometimes the head tags can get pretty long, and they can have a lot of stuff in there that's really important.
computer and you're running it locally.
More or less.
Like dragging a map.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That's why they're calling them web apps now. For the people who can do that kind of stuff, it's way, way, way harder than a regular web page is. But yeah, I do that kind of stuff. It's difficult, but yeah, you can do it. Over here we have our body tags. It doesn't have to have lang in here. Lang is being set to en-us, means English US language. Uh, and then dir, I'm not sure what dir equals, ltr equals whatever. P align equals center here. This is what we're saying is p tag is a paragraph tag, or basically adds a space more or less for something. And the center means we're going to center whatever it is in there in the center of the page on the line. Well, not in the center of the page, but the center of that line, horizontally speaking. And then you're going to do the same thing here with over here. So we have the slash p tag to enter whatever is being centered. So that ends whatever is being centered along horizontally. The U here means underline. So we have our slash U here means closing the underline. So everything in between there is going to get underlined between those two tags. And the B means bold. And everything in between the two gets bolded. If I want to do italicized, I would put I in here. So I'd literally do a tag like this. I would say come in here I, for instance, or a lowercase I. It doesn't really matter to me. Say I want to make this italicized now. Of course, it helps if I type it in the correct order. I would do that right there. So now it's going to be italicized, in addition to being bolded and underlined. Break means basically like hitting the enter key to go down to the next line. Okay. P makes it skip a line. It gives you a blank line like that. So P, B, 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 R, B, R, so we're saying breaks. So we're saying like enter key, go down. Give us a space. Basically is what we're saying. Right. So this is going to create a space. Here we're in another P tag right here. And we're doing A, href. So this is A stands for anchor. Href is going to be basically a URL for a web page site location. So this is the actual web page location. And that's where href is. Name is what we named it is Red Hat's homepage. Right? So that's the tooltip when they bring their cursor over it. Right? It pops up. And then here's the actual text that we're putting as the anchor on it. So essentially Red Hat is going to be made into a clickable link. This is a text that becomes a clickable link to go to this location right here. Does that make sense to everybody? And we close that with a /A. And then P here for a page, BRBR, and then image tag to display an image. So we're going to tell it to display an image. src is the source. Basically, we're saying the location of the file equals, in this case, we said /usr/share/pixmap/eclipse.png. Now, normally you would put this directly in your web page, and you wouldn't have it off here. So normally this would be stored in /var/ww/html/ maybe a folder called images, for instance, and you wouldn't reference this big long thing. Instead, you would say images/eclipse.png. Yes, you are. And you don't want to do that. So you don't want to do this. We'll be interested to see if it displays. Yeah. So name equals graphics1, align left, width here equals 256, height equals 256, and border, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that stuff for the most part. Anyways, BR, and then that closes it and finishes it off. Now if I change back my view, I can go back to my web layout. Well, ideally I can. Let's try saving real quick, yeah. Alright, well, I guess when I edited it, it broke the whole visual system or whatever. But basically I can display this as a web page, though. I can copy this over. So let's go ahead and do that now. Yes, it's still a valid page, if you will. So let's just hit up that terminal. Okay. So now if I go into /home/student/scripts, we have that good old web page, or at least I thought we did. Where did it save it? Did it not save it? Oh, no. Documents? Not cool if it didn't save it. No, there it is. I was about to say, yeah, no. Index.html slash here var slash www slash HTML is where we're going to copy it to. Bam, it copied it. All right. Now it's going to be a live page. Literally, yeah. The page is going to be live. So if I come back over to here and I tell it, and of course the image didn't work because why? Outside of the daggone thing. Yep. So we need to fix that. And let me show you how you normally do this. So let's do that real quick. That's what I said I thought was going to happen. Yeah, your files and everything, they're going to be used on your web page and to be in the actual web page DOM directory. Otherwise, it doesn't work, as you can see. So, yeah, and I'm going to copy that image into it. /HTML, come in there. Let's create a brand new directory called images. Literally, this is what you do on a web page like this. ls, and now we got a brand new folder for storing the images. You want to stay organized, otherwise it gets ridiculous, etc., etc., etc. All right, so if I cat index.php, because I can't remember where the address was exactly, so I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to have it tell me where it is. And so it tells me that, hey, this is where that file is. I'm like, all right, awesome. Because now I don't have to remember it. So I'm going to copy /. Oh, yes, I am this lazy. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to grab this right here, like so. And I'm going to copy it to where I'm currently at. Ta-da. So if I ls, there's that image. If I cd, I can go back here, cd space .. like so. ls into here, and I can just edit this whole index.html file real quick. And this is actually I'll do this all the time, where I'll just go into with Vim real quick and edit something like this, because it's just not worth it for me to re-download it through the FTP and then re-upload my changes or whatever. I'll literally just go in and edit it through the terminal. Most web developers won't do this, but I will, because I know I can. And this makes it easier for me, quite frankly. If I can go to edit mode here, and then I'm just going to change this folder into images. And this makes this, instead of being an absolute directory, this makes it into a relative directory, which is what you want. So that way you can have it relative in your folder on the computer you're developing on versus on the server, and you get the same thing when you match it back and forth. If you do an absolute path like it was a second ago, the problem with that is that the moment you move it from the client side to the server, you're not going to be able to, it's not going to display any images, because you're going to be referencing the images on your home computer and not on the server. That's not going to work. If you have it where it's an absolute path on the server, guess what? Those directories and those locations don't exist on your local machine. So when you go to download it, you can't see what you're working on for your page. So that doesn't work either. So doing a local file reference like this, directory, is what makes it work out great for you. Shift-ZZ to save that. Now if I come back, wait, I need to not do that. Basically localhost. Now we see the image. Make sense? And if I were on the internet, it would take me to redhat.com. So yeah, it works. And notice this is now italicized by putting in that I. Those are the basic main HTML commands you should probably be aware of, type thing. There's a lot more than that. I'm not going to get into it. HTML, honestly, if you want to you can learn it in about a day. It's really not hard to learn it. There's really not much to it. You just learned about half of the language just now. I'm not kidding you. There's really just not that much to it. you start adding other stuff into it, then it starts getting complicated. But just regular HTML by itself, it's not hard. All right. Other thing you should be interested in is PHP. For seeing what PHP modules are installed, because that's really important when you're doing a LAMP server. So let's look at that real quick. And I could go and type it up again inside gedit and do that, or I could just use Vim and do it right here, right now. And that's kind of what I feel like doing right now. So I'm going to say Vim here. Let's just call it like info.php, for instance. And bam, there it starts up. Alright, so I'm going to go into edit mode by hitting the I key. And then I can say open question mark PHP like this to start it. And then my ending tag is going to be a closing question mark tag like that, I believe. Make sure I'm not crazy. Alright, so if I come over here, I can say, I think it's info, is it PHP info? I think it might be PHP info. And it's a function, open close parentheses, semicolon. And what that does is it makes it display all the PHP information. It's either that or it's info PHP. I can't remember. I think it's PHP info. Just about pretty sure. Let me hit escape, hit Shift ZZ, like so, and it saves it. Now if I go back over to web browser and say I create another tab, let me just refresh this so you can see the yay. If I go over to another tab, I can say info. Well, okay, so localhost / info.php. PHP, enter. And what this does as a network admin, it lets you see all the modules that are installed on PHP and what you're missing or what you need for some development that's being done on a web page by one of your customers. Does that make sense? So then they know. So then you know if you're missing something that's needed for a blah 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 framework or configuration or whatever, and lets you know what you need to install. This really matters, particularly if they're paying for a customized server that where only they are on the server and no one else, because they're paying some money for that, guys, each month. So it kind of matters that you have some of their setup for them. And different levels of support can cause more and more money to be paid. So for help on it. Right there, that's all the stuff's installed. So if you see something is missing, you can install it and then restart your Apache server and you should see it update here. Now you do not want to leave this file hanging around once the server is live, because hackers can use this file to help hack the system by knowing what is available to them and what isn't. Right, so you don't leave this laying around on the server, okay? It's just purely for network administrative purposes. You could. A lot of network admins know how to write it off the top of their head like that for web administrators, because you do it all the freaking time. So, you do it like 1,000 times, you're probably going to remember it type thing, type deal. Of course, you could have it set up where you have a special little directory with your little scripts or whatnot, and then it automatically, don't forget, you could also write it into the script where it generates the page through an echo command. If you think about it, like, okay, not to get too nerdy on you, but what you could do, since we're on the subject, everybody's like, oh crap, why did you say anything? Alright, index.html. Alright, so, oh, not that one. What am I thinking? Cat, the easy one, info.php. That one. It's very short code, right? Cool. So, what I could do is I could take this code, I could hit Control Shift C to copy it, and then I could come over here to good old gedit, wherever gedit is. Your gedit. Okay, good. Hello, gedit. And what I could do after the fact here, because they would have to have root privileges, right? I could come in here like so, and I could do that like so. Give it a space just to make sure it's got some spaces. It won't have pretty formatting. There is the downside to that, but I could do echo like this. Put it in quotes. Now what's that going to do if I do echo in quotes like that? Alright, I'm going to show you guys what it does since I'm not getting any answers. Alright. Alright, this is what this does. Displays it to the screen. What can we do with stuff that's displayed to the screen? We can redirect it to a file. Yeah, that's the important part. Alright, so what I can do then is come over here and redirect it to a file to override it and something like this and say /var /ww /html /info, if I spell it right, .php. And now, whenever we run the script, it generates that file and writes it out every time to that location. Make sense? Hey, and you know what? This varies between whether or not you're doing this for Red Hat or for Red Hat and CentOS and Ubuntu. So ideally, you would want to do something a little bit different here. You would come in here like this, for instance. Push that over a bit, drop that down. And then for Ubuntu, you're going to do this right here because the DOM is in a different location, unless you edit it. That's where it is on Ubuntu. On Red Hat and CentOS, it's in a different location. That's where it is on Red Hat, and that's where it is on CentOS. So you can quite literally automate. This is how you can write out whole configuration files and stuff like that. You know, you could sit there and say, okay, I generated a file, and the next one use double arrow over, so it's going to append, right? And you can have it write out the file line by line with echo signs, with echo commands like this. No kidding, going to the same file. So that works. It's really simple. But hey, it works. Actually, you know, I need to, I have it right where I need it. What am I talking about? So there we are for that one. And that takes care of that as far as the lamp. So if you want to like integrate that, that's fine by me. I don't care. And that will generate your PHP info file right on the fly for whatever distribution of Linux you're using. And then bam, you can just test it immediately for your PHP right afterwards without even having to go in and write the file each time. Automated laziness. It's the way you, what's up? Yeah, exactly. So that makes it easy. You can just do it that way. The more of these little shell commands stuff you learn and you can use and script them up, the easier it gets and the more you can do with it. All right, one last thing. Let's look at the Apache configuration file and then we're done. Okay. So I can just look at this through the whole shell here if I like. cd/etc/ like so. And then, oh gosh, trying to remember what it is inside of. Yeah, this was afraid of. There we are. So we're going to edit this file right here, httpd.conf, like so. And then now we can see inside our configuration file for Apache. Alright, so we got different directives and everything. This file does a pretty good job explaining it and whatnot. I'm not going to get into everything that's in here. There's more information than what I want to cover, quite frankly. And this can get into a very long discussion. There's entire books written on this, alright? So you can get a whole book on Apache. Matter of fact, I recommend it. And don't forget, this is a server that's used on like all the operating systems, so Apache is a really good one to learn, period. Because I don't care which operating system you're going to use, you're still probably going to end up using Apache for your server, regardless of which one it is. So, you know, hey. Server tokens. Yeah, open source has really gotten itself all around. Server root /etc/httpd, essentially where the directory is for the configuration files for Apache, which is where I'm at right now, accessing this file. It's saying, hey, where is it at? Right here. PID file for process ID number, timeout. Keep alive is off. Keep alive request 100. Keep alive timeout. You know, just read through these. These are basically performance options, tune and set as you see fit as you're going through. Pre-fork, npm, multi-processor here. Start servers, number of servers processing to start, min spare servers, so on and so forth. Pre-fork here, so start servers here, min spare servers, max spare servers, server limit, max clients, and max requests per child, 4,000. So basically this gets into more performance options. Feel free to read through this part of the configuration file for more information on those different parts, and also your book covers some of this information too in it for Apache. But yeah, it matters, but go ahead and just look over it. I'm just trying to get things knocked out here before the video gets too long. Start from our max clients, keep work alive. There's some more on that. Listen, okay, so this gets into the port. By default, 80, don't change this unless you have a really good reason to, but you can set this to another port. Like, so technically, let me just show you this real quick. Technically, all right, so here we've been accessing it as localhost because the default here is port 80 when you're doing it. So essentially, when we're saying this right here, we are essentially saying localhost :80 because that's how you put a port in, okay? Now, if I change that port from 80 to something else, like say 880 for instance, blah 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 blah, 880 whatever, 8080, like that instead, I would have to type in localhost :8080 in order to access it because this thing's going to default to port 80. That's why I don't recommend you changing it from 80 unless you mean to do so to mess with people on purpose, like maybe security type thing where you don't want people to access it unless they know what magical port to be on. Think about some of your routers. Some of your routers need to be on port like whatever it is in order to access that page to configure the router. Webmin needs to be on port 10,000 or on port 1,000, so on and so forth. Makes sense? So it's what port you're basically running an Apache server on when you're changing this port. Default is 80. Your firewall is going to match up with 80 if you say Apache HTTP. It defaults to 80, and that's what it is on there. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a custom entry into your firewall too, by the way. So if you change that, it's going to affect several things. Be aware of all that stuff, okay? All right, but that's where you can do it, and that's how you can do it. So that's that. You can tell it to listen only on a certain address, so only certain IP addresses can access it. So on and so forth. Dynamic shared objects, DSO, be loaded here. Examples of those additional modules, basically they're being loaded to basically extend the functionality of Apache. Just like we did with PHP modules, those were mods. Those are dynamic loading modules that we added additional functionality to Apache so that it could do PHP, MySQL, etc. Make sense? These .sos are actual library files on Linux because we don't have DLLs. So here you can see the different ones being loaded up on there. There's quite a few. That's what the load module is on it. Kind of like you would do server modules in a kernel. Oh, you guys don't know about that yet. Later on you'll know about that. Include configuration files. Extend status on. You can turn stuff on like this. Sorry, some of this stuff I think matters more than other things. If you wish your HTTP to run as a different user or group, you must run HTTP as root initially, and it will switch. So here's where you can set some of that stuff up. But we're just using user Apache and group Apache. But you can change that if you so desire. Main server configuration. This is where you can also set virtual hosts. A virtual host and virtual hosting allows you to have multiple websites on a single server. And what you do is you basically make each user account on the system to be the hosted DOM account. So you do a DOM entry for every user account for the web page, and it serves that web page up off of that user account. So that way, when the user logs in through like SSH or something like that, they can go into their user account and they FTP into their user account. Does that make sense? And they can upload their web page into it and all this stuff, and then the web page can go live up on the web page browser. I think you can have up to like 64 virtual hosts on a single server. So essentially, you can have like 64 customers sharing one server for web hosting. Yeah, I think that's the maximum on it. So they're going to appear inside of a virtual host tag definition. I'm not going to get into it right now, but yeah, that's how you do it more or less. Server admin root at localhost. I think we may have one lab that goes over a little bit on it. Here's the server name. So you can set the server name in here. Now this is being set up by default for a single website only, okay, and not the multiple websites I was talking about with the virtual hosting. So this is what it's going to go to that dom/var/www/html. And here we're giving the name of the site. So in this case, it's like www.example.com:80, and that makes sense for this fake website that they're doing right here. You can change that. Essentially, you're going to have your DNS server point to this web server, and then connect to that. This server is typically going to be the www server on your DNS. So your overall DNS address may be example.com or whatever, but your web server is probably going to be www.example.com. You could also have it point to your Apache server too for when someone typed in example.com if you like, and redirect that from the DNS server, and you'll handle that with your DNS server for doing that stuff. Canonical name determines how Apache constructs self-referencing. Yep. Your name, server port. Here's your document root. This is basically where the web page is being served out of. So when you're doing the virtual hosting, you literally have a definition like this for each and every virtual website. So this file can get very long if you have a lot of virtual hosting. Make sense? So /var/www/html, and this is the location of this website where it's being hosted out of for the directory tree structure. Okay. Directory. Follow symbolic links. Allow override. None. Forward parallel. Directory here. Document root. So yeah, you're going to set this to whatever the document root is, which should be identical. Symbolic links. Allow overrides. None. Allow deny. Allow from all. It means everyone can access it. If you don't want everyone to access it, you can limit them by IP address range, etc. Let's see here. Permissions. Here they start talking about some of the permissions. Have permissions of 711 user ID. Public HTML must have permissions of 755. This is like what's required for things to work. Otherwise, they'll start getting like forbidden messages. Will they be denied access based on permissions? This is also where you generate your forbidden pages, and all that stuff is done through this Apache configuration file here, which we'll get into just a second. User directory disabled. If module, all right. So yeah, here's an example of the user account, their home account, and the public HTML, and this is where their page would be hosted out of. So this is a template for it, which is great. It's pretty cool. Excuse me. Index.html, index.html.var, yeah, multi-views. ht.htaccess, this is a special file for permissions for what someone's allowed to access on a website, and it can be a very important file, matter of fact. And this allows you to have custom permissions based on each website, based on their .htaccess file that's going to be stored in each DOM location. Make sense to everybody? You'll notice the dot in front of it, so it is a hidden file. Hostname lookups off. Send file off. Error logs. It's going to go into logs, error log for this one. And then you can set your log level. Do you want it to be warned? Do you want it to be error, etc.? You can set the different values there to be more critical, etc. for different values. And then you can literally code it out to do what you want for it. So log format here, you can set up your log format. And you can control it, where it be common agent, so on and so forth. You can have your different log files for different parts. Refer log, agent log, combined. But besides this, I'm really looking for the error page generation too. Trailing icons. Alias here for icon location. Directory tree structure. You notice a lot of stuff is in place for you, so you don't have to do a whole lot with it. CGI bin, this matters. This is going to be server-side scripts to be executed on the server for doing some kind of task. And those matter. So you should have a CGI bin. So var/ww/CGI bin. That should be in place. It's important. Encoding icons by icon type. README header, or hold on a second, going through this some more. Here's your different languages that can be supported by the web server, so on and so forth. Of course, the web pages have to support it too, but anyways. Language priority. Forced language priority. Add default character set. UTF-8 is fine. Standard. Type of application, target files, .z, gz, etc. There's a lot of stuff here. Error documents. Good. When someone makes a mistake and they try to access something that doesn't have the right permissions or whatever, they can end up getting a 403 forbidden. If they try to access a page that does not exist because it's been deleted or whatever, they'll get a 404 error. You guys have probably seen these before when you access a web page. Here you are. But you have to have these pages made so that it generates this default page. So for instance, my server has to be set up to actually generate these pages. So if I tried to come to a page that doesn't exist on the server, like for instance, if I try to go to localhost here slash whatever .html, makes sense? So we have to worry about that stuff too. That's what that is right here. And here we got, so we got the server made a boo-boo, missing .html, so this actually refers to a page that displays when it's missing. That's what you just saw, right? We get other ones, CGI bin missing handler.pl, so this is a Perl script that runs and generates a message for that, for 404 on that for a CGI bin type task. 402 error, example.com subscription.info.html is what it's going to run for that. They got more than that. I mean, there's a lot more than that. International error, internationalization error for basically language error, things of that nature. Usually there's a good long list of these. Aliases. Here's an alias /var/ww/error, and this typically lists all the error files. And you can actually go in and you can change these and edit them. Yeah, see, check it out. Bad request, unauthorized, forbidden, not found, method not allowed, request timeout, gone. Length required, precondition failed, request entity too large, request URI too large, unsupported media type, international server error not implemented, bad gateway, service unavailable, variant also varies, etc. But remember that was in /var/www/errors. So if you go in that directory, quite literally you'll see these different files for these different pages that appear when someone has errors. You can edit these. You can change them, make them say different things depending on what you want, if you like. No kidding. But there, anyways, that's how you do them. That's how you access them, and that's how the configuration file grabs them and accesses them based on these different conditions. Real quick, let's see here. Oh yes, so that one matters a lot. Browser matching, real player Java JDK 1.0. There's a lot of stuff in here. Dreamweaver, location, status, proxy. You can deal with that there. There's so much information in this thing. Let's see here. Name, virtual host example here, star. And there we go with virtual hosts for that part. Any questions? Probably too many to even list, right? But essentially it gives you a breakdown of the Apache configuration file. And that is the main configuration file for Apache. Note also the other one that's really matters a whole lot, especially if you're doing LAMP servers, is the PHP ini file. That's the other one that matters a whole lot. And again, that file gets bigger and bigger depending on how many you have. In order to help manage to see what you have and don't have, help with that, I'm showing you the PHP info function. That helps you hunt down what you need and what you need to install into the system that may be missing. You may find something in there you don't want in there. You could also remove that application or module basically by uninstalling it. Things of that nature. Any questions on any of this, or did it kind of make sense? I'm not really asking you to do anything in the Apache configuration file, but I do want you to do the setup. I would like for you to script it so it gives you some scripting practice along with doing those commands. Yeah, you could just type in the commands into the terminal. I mean, don't get me wrong, that works fine. But I would like for you to script this up so that way you get some scripting practice. So that way when you get on the tests and stuff like that, and that way when you get on the Linux Plus or whatever, the scripting stuff won't be alien to you. They don't go in as depth as typically as something like this. But when you get to one of their scripts, it's going to be like a piece of cake. And that's the way I want it to be for you. So that way you have an easier time passing that exam. Make sense? Cool. Well, with that, basically, that's LAMP. Well, a simpler presentation of LAMP. I mean, you could probably spend 20, 40 hours, breaking down all the parts of the Apache configuration file, the PHP, MySQL database. I didn't even touch on that thing at all. There's a way of changing the user password on there. There's commands for doing SQL requests, and I'm not getting into it right now. But yeah, PHP MyAdmin lets you basically do those MySQL tests and lets you manage the database tables and all that stuff without having to even know the SQL. I recommend you do learn SQL though. It's easy. SQL is not hard, and since you're not having to design databases, you don't really have that many headaches. The people that have the headaches are the ones that are actually doing the database development, because they have to lay out the databases and figure out how to design them properly, and that's what's difficult about a database system. Not the actual SQL language. It's super basic, easy. It's not complicated at all. It's very simple and straightforward. It's like, it's basically like commands like, display all the elements from this table here or whatever. Kill this table, drop it, basically add this table to it, add this record entry into the table, so on and so forth. So it's not bad at all. There's really not much to it. But anyways, and then if you start getting into performance tuning, which you won't ever do for databases, that's someone else's problem type deal. That's the programmer's problem for how to code that stuff out. So you basically just get to skim by basics, and that's it. And you don't need to know more than that for the most part. Okay. Well, with that pretty much covers your LAMP server and a little bit more.